I'm Robby Peters, co-founder of PeopleTech Partners.
I'm Aisha Stephenson. I'm the head of HR at Mesosphere.
So we go way back, right?
We do.
You were on the first ever panel for HR 2.0.
Do you know that I actually didn't know that was the first panel?
Did you not?
No, for years.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's terrible. I thought that I was just like, I put all this pressure on myself because I thought, oh, they've been doing these panels. Everybody on the panels, they've done this before. So I got up there and actually, Ann Watson, another PeopleTech advisor, was on the panel, and I just remember everything that she said was just like a filmable moment.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I should really think about what I'm going to say.
That's awesome.
But I thought that Startup HR was definitely one of those platforms that was really looking forward in a people-first way. I had been in the nonprofit world for like 7 years and then came back into the tech space. And I really didn't know in the beginning how to sort of apply my HR sort of expertise in that environment. But just like, sort of startups, you're scrappy and you sort of figure it out. I thought Startup HR was a great place, a great community to sort of, try ideas out with people. I remember, trying to come up with rewards programs and coming up with sort of learning and development. Don't have a budget for that. So what are you doing? What kind of cool ideas are you working with your managers to talk to employees about? So Startup HR was great.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear you didn't know that was our first event. And we were branding that one. That was on the HR 2.0 that then kicked off the Startup HR, right? And obviously both kind of came out together, but I remember that first event actually because I had to carry in like all the ice and actually set all the drinks up. And I remember I was like, I hope we'll get 30 people because we had a pretty killer panel at that time.
I think so. I was on it.
Exactly. But we ended up getting, I think, like 250, 300 people that signed up for that first event.
There were so many people there. Like everybody was sweating. It was great.
Totally.
It was so great. It's very warm in there.
I love it. And if you can think back to that actually then, so, I mean, I know obviously at Mesosphere now, but then you were at Okta, it sounds like I didn't know as much on your nonprofit. Like what would you say kind of were those differences that you first noticed coming out of nonprofit into the tech world?
So I had actually, for 7 years worked at the same nonprofit agency, and in the nonprofit world, especially working with developmentally disabled adults and children, you get all of your money from the state, which means you don't get a lot. So, sort of taking everything I'd learned, getting my master's in human resources and organizational development, and sort of the jobs that I'd had previously were perfect for that. And I could sort of put, on spin, wash, repeat, and do that. And it was great, I think, to really sort of hone the framework, the traditional HR framework, I think that you set up in any company. And so repeating it really gave me the ability to make sure that those things were happening while also sort of multitasking on other things. But after 7 years, it got kind of rote. And so I got an offer from a friend, Frederick Karist at Okta. They offered me a job, and I remember coming back and saying to my husband, oh my God, they gave me a job. Can you believe it? And literally the first day was just like I thought, coming into this like totally quiet environment room of like 30 engineers. The salespeople were in the corner like playing golf, and that was the only noise in the office. But there were only like 2 or 3 of them. And so I literally just came in and was like, I'm just going to try and be a fly on the wall. And I think that coupled with connecting with Andreessen Horowitz and Shannon Schultz, the talent partner there.
She's awesome.
She had her eye on all of the portfolio companies and connected me with some of them. And that was the beginning. I mean, that's exactly what happened at Startup HR. People were talking about sort of what do I do as I'm scaling this company from 10 to 50 to 100 people. Here's what we're seing. How do you perform exits? How do you communicate them? At what point do you stop telling the whole company that people are leaving? What benefits do you have? And so that's when we started working with Sequoia. And I think for that first stint back in the tech space at Okta, for the first 4 years, Sequoia was actually the 7th member of the team by the end, dealing with compliance and all those things and laws and regulations that you have to. allowed me to focus on, creatively thinking about how can we provide professional development for our teams with, as little money as possible, running lean. How do you create a rewarding and valuable onboarding experience? So it was great.
Coming in and helping teams go and scale, right? I mean, so because at Okta, you joined as employee 40, right?
75.
Okay, 75, okay.
Yeah.
And then scaled really quickly, right? Like what was the kind of the journey?
So we tripled the first year I was there and doubled in size every year thereafter. So I was there for 4 years. And I can't tell you how much every day felt like I was just running. And so what Sequoia was able to do is really connect me with other sort of tech-based clients that they had, tech company clients that they had. And the benefits they were offering were, of course, your standard medical, dental, vision, and those kinds of things. But they started to really expand and talk to companies that were dealing with health and wellness or dealing with all these different perks, lifestyle perks. And then it was having our fall flu shot clinic.
There you go,
but they had people come and do a BMI testing. And that's when you started to see like people were sort of connecting over the kinds of programs that we were sort of putting together for them. And so that's why I say Sequoia was sort of like the other member of the HR team.
I love that.
And that's where I met Robby and Kara and a bunch of other advisors who eventually became advisors in the PeopleTech Partners Group. And it's been my sanity.
Nice.
I think that we've shared ideas, and a lot of sort of ideas that we were talking about back then, now they have terms for.
That's really cool. Yeah.
I mean, it feels like we were sort of experimentally working through these things and how to have more of a people-first philosophy and be really creative about the way we were building programs and things like that. But I remember the leave programs and sort of vacation and moving to flexible or unlimited PTO and talking to Anne and you and the rest of the people in Startup HR, then became PeopleTech advisors. It really feels like there's been this evolution.
Totally.
And we've been part of it, and it's been really exciting.
Yeah. That's cool. I like how you say that too, because I think what I noticed, it feels like everything's usually like a 3-year shift or something like that, right? Start talking about it, and I think what the people leaders within our group of PeopleTech have done really well, and we're talking about like 7 years ago, is like really going to the employees, figuring out what they really want, right? And then kind of voicing that and saying like, hey, I'm hearing we need this, and then it's like those couple early adopters, that's the first one to roll out the unlimited PTO, or the first person to put in a great leave practice, and it kind of like the group all works together, and then kind of pushes out those great ideas from there too, right?
Exactly.
So that's cool to hear, and it is kind of that group think mentality. It's like those conversations always start like on those threads or wherever, like, is everyone thinking about this? And then it's like, hey, I was thinking about that same thing too, right? And then like everybody adds on top of that. So that's really cool to hear you say that, because like I feel like that's exactly like what we're trying to build, obviously, with PeopleTech. So it's awesome.
Of course you were. Of course you were. You knew what you were doing from the beginning.
No, it's cool though. But it's also like, again, these things all have like real terms now, like that people are most of the topics we're talking about at today's conference, right? Like were stuff that we were all kind of like working about early on 3-5 years ago, and now it's like building, and there's actually like tracks for all these different things, right? Because they become huge within companies.
Oh my gosh, it's so much, yes. And I think about sort of the evolution of startup HR to PeopleTech partners, and I feel like there was there's an example, Culturam.
Yep.
It was a company I think I was introduced maybe a year into my time at Okta. And I remember we did a pilot program with them, sort of just out of the blue. I think that they had been going around the VCs and talking to portfolio companies, and we just grew with them. And I remember asking Todd McKinnon, the CEO at Okta, hey, I want to do this employee survey. And I'm pretty sure I didn't use the word engagement survey, because I thought, I'll give him the pitch later after we've done it. He was like, no, there is no way we're doing an employee survey. I don't want to know who's happy, who's sad, whose coffee's too hot, who like doesn't like the lunches that we serve. And I was like, this isn't that kind of survey.
Totally.
So trust me.
Nice.
And he, I sent it out. I forgot to remind him that it was going out. He immediately called me and was like, I can't believe you did this. You know how I feel about this? And I was like, I know if this was a huge mistake, I will totally own it and make it up to you. But take the survey, see how you feel, and I can't tell you the anxiety I felt walking into his office in our first one-on-one after that survey, and he literally was like, Aisha, I thought it was amazing.
Nice. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah.
It was one of those moments where it was like, I'm taking a chance on this new thing that I don't know about, but it sounds really cool, and I'm sort of an HR geek, and I love the concepts that he's talking about,
that's amazing.
And engagement, and really tying surveying employees to the work that they're doing, and whether or not they feel committed, and whether or not they feel as though leadership is really inspiring them. There's a vision to follow. Those are all things that it's sort of that had never really been talked about, along with culture. So it was really cool to sort of go through that evolution with them. And now at PeopleTech Partners, it seems like we're doing the same thing. You know, looking at companies that are just starting out, have this great sort of idea about HR tech or recruiting tech, and then literally using sort of the experience in those early days when we had no idea what we were doing, and saying, you know, for small companies, they have no idea what they're doing, so you have to pitch it this way. For mid-market, you know, as soon as you get to 200, you have to pitch it this way. I remember how I was feeling then, so it's super cool, and it is something that I thought would be like, it would be sort of hard to get into, but it just came naturally.
Totally. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I love the story of like, you know, because it's taking progressive people leaders like yourself to actually like say, hey, this is how it's going to be done. And I love that you're saying you're speaking directly to the CEO on it and actually doing it. And then
actually
like,
almost got fired.
Hey, but you felt like it was the right thing to do, right?
I did.
And so those are the types of, I mean, that's exactly why you've always been drawn to this community, because you've always been, you know, forward thinking and wanting to do those things, which is really cool. What are some of the things right now? Obviously, like you said, like a lot of this we've been starting to, you know, put in and you know, like now Culture Amp is working with so many different companies, and everyone now has, you know, a different system, whether it's Reflective or Lattice or wherever. Like it's like these have become like the norm because they actually like CEOs are buying in, they're doing them. What's you know, what is the next thing that's exciting you right now? Like what are some of the things that keep you up at night, or that you're going to go stand up and put your name on going forward?
So we were actually just talking about this earlier, but I really love what Blueboard is doing. You know, there are different programs, I think, that when I came back to the tech space in 2012, so long ago, that, you know, you had these ideas about how to sort of tweak the programs to make it a little bit more, you know, sort of culturally involved, and tying it to sort of the culture of the company and the identity of the company, like onboarding. There are ways in which you could sort of talk about values in addition to sort of the company norms, and here are the operating procedures that I think you could sort of slowly evolve on your own. But rewards and recognition has always been that area where you can't really, you know, typically there's like, I think in the startup world it was like you give them a bottle of champagne when they've been there for a year, and then when they've been there 2 years, you know, you give them like, we got them like chocolate strawberries, like a fruit or something like that. But it felt like we were just trying to come up with things to, you know, sort of, you know, celebrate the milestone that weren't tied to, you know, sort of, you know, the company or to an experience that would make you feel super appreciated and that you'd carry with you forever. So, and Blueboard's doing exactly that.
That's cool.
I think that I haven't yet introduced it at Mesosphere, but I do think that there's a new CEO. I think that, you know, sort of rather than, you know, just throwing sort of money at people in terms of bonuses and rewarding high performance, I think this is a really creative way to do that.
That's awesome.
And Bravely. I love the concept of Bravely. It's one of the PDP companies. And I just think that, you know, it sort of was a little bit weird at first to think about, you know, employees come to me, why would they need to go to somebody else? But the reality is that internally, employees still look at, you know, sort of the HR team as, you know, I only go to them if I have trouble, or if there's something going on, or something like that. And we have to sort of seek out, you know, those positive things that are going on. But they are always sort of worried if it's a topic that they think is really sensitive, and so I might hear about it from a colleague or a manager or something like that. I think that this really gives employees the confidence to take their, you know, issue, concern, whatever it is, to sort of, you know, bravely, and have them talk about it in a very general way. And then sort of connect back to the HR team. For me, that is like worth its weight in gold, because, you know, it's sort of giving HR this positive spin. And you know, most of the time, I think that we say the same things. Our response would be the same.
Yeah.
That's another company I'm trying to bring on at Mesosphere. I think that it could be super helpful with a remote workforce like we have, a distributed workforce. Oh my gosh, I think it would be so great.
Yeah. How cool. And you know what I remember, I don't know if you remember this chain on one of the original, PTP Google group things. I met Bravely and I was like, this sounds, really interesting. I'm like,
how does it work?
How does it work? Yeah, exactly. How does it work? But also, I was like, this could either go one of two ways. Like, one, HR people within our network could be like, I hate that. Like, why would I do that? Or two, they could be receptive, like you said, of let's figure out how we can tweak this to use this to our advantage.
Right.
And it was so cool because I put that note out, and I think 15 people within an hour were basically saying, could be something that's weird to work with, but also think this idea is there. Let's get in there. Let's work with Bravely. And literally, I think we helped build that. How do they partner? For now, you're bringing them up and saying they're not competitive to me. They're actually helping me with all these things, helping my employees have access. I mean, the remote and distributed workforce that you're talking about.
It's crazy to try and that keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Sort of making sure that our remote employees feel connected, and I feel like I've worked for companies that have worked with the government and some that haven't. And so I think that in my head, at least, there was always this idea of sort of if they don't want to go to HR and they don't want to go to management, who do they go to?
Yeah.
And so, if you're working with the government, you have to have a whistleblower, lines for them to call or something like that. This, I think, is more appropriate. You don't have too many whistleblower incidents, but what you do have are those employees who feel like they are too scared or worried about their job, about how it will look, and the ability to go somewhere with a Bravely, I think it gives them the confidence to really engage the way that we want them to, I think sets the right behavior in place.
Cool.
And so if they're not going to come to HR, that's exactly where I would want them to go. If not their manager, that's a place that you can trust that they can go and get really good advice and guidance. So Zoom is just great. I mean, I think that again, back when I came back to the tech space, there were sort of HRIS, recruiting, technology, and it was 2 or 3 companies that were doing business, and it was how can I find the best of the worst? There wasn't really anybody doing it very well. And the same thing was sort of with video conferencing.
Totally.
And I remember we had so much trouble with GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar. It seemed like the best, but it was best of the worst again. And so I just sort of downplayed video conferencing altogether as not a way that you could really sort of capture the remote workforce. And then came to Mesosphere, and they use Zoom exclusively. And I think that the real trick is that it actually works every single time you need it to. But also, we have a rule at Mesosphere that you have to turn the video on. And so it takes it from what it used to be, which is everybody gets on a conference call, and that was the way you tried to connect.
Their teeth on
but
mute,
literally, you're one-on-one with that person, and so. And we do it not just with the remote distributed workforce. We do it if I'm working from home. I was working with Joni Riker, who's the Chief People Officer, and I was like, what is this whole turn on your video thing when we have our one-on-ones? And she's like, I don't care if you're in your pajamas, if you haven't done your hair, if you haven't brushed your teeth. I need to have a connection with you.
Yeah, totally.
And it was something that I was not used to, but now, especially now that she's gone, I feel like I have to carry that on. That's just a part of our culture.
So cool.
And I think that really enables us to have a remote workforce.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so cool you bring that up. And so now it's but this platform, Zoom, like you said, that's just working. It's allowing for that face-to-face, but also it's also creating a whole new culture of understanding, you need a pause when you're talking, because especially if 5 people are on, how do you make sure people get equal airtime, right? Or how do you, make sure that, it's being connected properly, like where someone's using Bravely, they're actually mostly using a technology, often is Zoom in the back end of that, right? And so they're being able to do it, where they are, how they're feeling about it, and that's so cool that you're talking about, like Joni's like, I don't care if you're in your pajamas. I remember Shelby did a whole one, she's running HR and people at Envision, and she was talking about like, this is me on the daily. You actually get to know people a little bit better, right? You're like, I always see that picture in the back of your wall. Like, what is that about you? Who is that? Do you feel like that too? Do you see that?
For me, I always feel like I'm the one who's going to trip and fall if somebody's going to trip and fall, or I'm the one who's going to have like something poking out of my hair or something like that. For the the video conferences on Zoom, it's always been like I have the loudest cat and did not know I had the loudest cat until literally she just and everybody on the team who was at like HQ was like, who is that? It's like, that's my cat. And so they know I'm a cat person now. And then I had to get my dog who was like running around, who's a little puppy. And so it's like, I have to go for just 1 second. I promise I'll be right back. And so anyway, it's those moments that I think, the remote employee misses. And for me, I like facial expressions. In person is always, the best way for me to communicate. So Zoom, makes that happen for all of our remote staff.
That's cool. I often have my little dog trying to get up on me, knocking down, like, what's going on right there? But then it's like, then people go, well, no, I want to see it, right? And you pick it up, and you're like, here you go. And like, you feel like you're getting to know people because they're doing that and having a little bit of fun with it too, right?
It's totally great. I mean, I think we've even taken it a step further. We have what's called Build, Mentor, and Connect. It's this sort of leadership meeting that we gather all the leaders, the people leaders monthly. And one of the sessions was how to really manage your remote workforce with Zoom. And so it was all of the little tricks and tools that you use in terms of raising your hand, in terms of stopping and pausing after every question to make sure that people have time to sort of like unmute themselves if they're on mute or something like that. I mean, there are things that I'd been using Zoom for at least a year before I went to that session. It was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know there was a raise your hand, and I didn't know there was a this and a that, and also how to read your people to make sure that you're engaging everybody, that everybody gets a chance to speak, and sort of calling on people to make sure that they're in the discussion. It's now like sort of a part of how we operate, which I think is really, really cool to think about. Again, that evolution from GoToMeeting never worked to Zoom makes these conversations and connections happen every day. And that kind of teaching you're talking about, is that something that Mesosphere created for your individual employees, or is that something that Zoom actually rolls out? So if someone's watching this conversation, they can actually go online and find this to learn these rules. I'm sure Zoom will come up with that, but no, this is something that Mesosphere created. Again, Joni Riker, who she worked at Apple, she worked at HP, she worked at Airbnb.
Was that where you two originally met?
No. I actually hadn't met her. I met her through Mark Manjola.
No way. I love it. I think a trend that I can build on from our conversation around the remote and distributed workforce of being able to use obviously like this video technology, but also being able to do stuff where actually applying kind of AI into some of these things as well, that like are giving you nudges like, hey, this person hasn't talked in a while, or this is going on, and actually really being able to track that performance because they're all being had. I mean, some of it's a little bit Big Brotherish, but other parts are like, we can always improve like our meetings if we get the proper nudges at the right time and we're tracking all these things, right? So I think that to me is going to be interesting, like how do you use AI to just continue to enhance these conversations, because Zoom has taken it to a level now where you do have this, and now how do we use even more technology to make it even more productive on top of that?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, I don't know that I have sort of like a specific trend that I think is going to come. I think that there's so many right now, but I do think that connecting those, the technology that's out there to make, to really bridge. I think there's a session called putting the human touch in technology.
Cool.
For me, I think it's going from not having any of that technology available that really worked and helped us to all these different types of technology for different things in HR or recruiting that all connected help us support, coach, mentor, manage our people much more sort of personally than I ever thought HR would.
So cool. And you're saying personally with technology being the enabler, which is
Totally,
so cool, right?
totally.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it's great.
Definitely.
Well, thanks, Robby.
Thank you, Aisha. Obviously, always,
Great to talk to you.
always been supporting from day one. First panel.
I mean,
you know?
how could I not be
Exactly.
supportive? I didn't know it was your first panel.
I love
Thought
it.
you've been
I
doing
love
this
it.
for years.
Yeah. Well, we faked it well, so.